Welcome to the Hollywood Scholar. I'm Jed Morgan, and as we always knew, a few months after The Rings of Power came out, there would be articles and just general people saying, was that actually that good? I don't remember. Was that good? And just generally forgetting about the show and then being a little bit more critical of it after its initial release. We've seen this with Kenobi, we've seen this with Miss Marvel. A lot of these shows that were paraded out as the best thing since sliced bread are soon forgotten, and the people who still remember it after that initial release start to be critical of it and think about it logically and be like, yeah, maybe it wasn't as good as I pretended it was going to be. We knew that was going to happen with Rings of Power just like everything else. What we didn't know is that it would be happening this soon, not even a week after the finale aired. There are so many mainstream and Access Media articles being critical of the show. Now, maybe not quite to the deal that I am and others like me are critical of the show. Some are still trying to cope a little bit, but I really expected for the first month afterwards for it just to be like, hey, you guys are wrong. This show is the best thing ever. It's still great. It's still great. You're still wrong, which we saw with Kenobi is about a month afterwards. They were still pressing that narrative, and then the evolution towards critical thinking began to occur and towards forgetfulness began to occur. It's already happening with the Rings of Power, not even a week after. I've got this series of articles for you from several mainstream and Access Media sources, and I am shocked to say that they're being critical. And now I don't agree with everything they say. They don't take it nearly as far as I do, but this is improvement, and that is something that I was not expecting whatsoever. Like, we have this article here from The Guardian, and The Guardian is normally like way out there hard pressing stuff and going nuts. Like, they had a lot of the alt-right stuff going on with the Rings of Power and with Top Gun, with the Northmen. They're always the ones pushing the political narratives the hardest. But this headline says, now it's over. Let's come out and say it. The Rings of Power was a stinker. No shit. It's almost like I've been saying that for a while now, and others like me have been saying that for a while now, and we've been called a lot of hateful names. I hope this Stewart guy is prepared to be called alt-right, racist, all those hateful names in the book, because you're not allowed to criticize the show or you're patently evil. But this is really impressive to see. I do want to take a couple lines from this. According to Nelson, it was a conclusive victory for Tolkien in the initial weeks. That I want to refute because that doesn't include the actual normal cable viewing of House of the Dragon, because that's a big part of it is actual HBO versus HBO Max. This is only comparing HBO Max numbers to Amazon Prime numbers, and that's taking out about half of House of the viewers' numbers, if not more. So yeah, there is a little bit of misrepresenting of some numbers in this, but his feelings are still what's legitimate. I just wanted to point that out. Since then, House of the Dragon has sucked up the spotlight. It has attracted tweets, theories, memes, discussions, and that's true. All the attention on social media and everything is being drawn towards House of the Dragon, not Rings of Power. There are very few memes that I've seen that are pro Rings of Power that are just being funny about it and not really criticizing it, maybe making fun of a little aspect. I've seen so many hundreds of those for House of the Dragon. Meanwhile, if the Rings of Power has been seen anywhere, it was only in places paid for by Amazon. Yeah, the marketing campaign for Amazon was so much larger than House of the Dragons. It dwarfed it. But House of the Dragon is destroying it, so it's great to see him pointing out things like this. So when actually talking about the show, my point is good television cannot function on who shot Phil Mitchell cliffhangers alone. And that's what this entire season was. Mystery box after mystery box after mystery box. And that's what exemplified the show. And once the mystery boxes were opened, they were always underwhelming. And that's what we predicted from the beginning. This is bad reboot production. Mystery boxes. That's all that they really know how to do besides misappropriating the past. Yes, that might be the destination, but the journey also has to be enjoyable as well. Great point. The journey for Rings of Power is not enjoyable whatsoever. And in terms of both plot and presentation, the Rings of Power simply hasn't cut the mustard. That is a really weird way of putting it, but I'd agree. The biggest issue was the acting, and there was no consistency whatsoever. Those are things that I've mentioned quite a bit in my reviews. The acting was horrific from pretty much everyone, and now you can debate whether or not that was the director's fault or whatnot, the script's fault, but the performances were all very, very bad. But he goes out and defends Morfydd Clark here, saying that she knew what she was doing, she was the only good actor. That I will strongly and vehemently disagree with, but he's at least being nuanced with his position, and that is something that I can respect. It felt like this was made for nobody, and that's just really great place to end this article is who was this made for? Nobody really knows. And mentioning how all the tweets and stuff were getting drawn towards House of the Dragon, just look at the Google trending from the last month. It's dwarfed in comparison. There's barely even a blip when the episode comes out, whereas House of the Dragon, it really goes up when each episode is released, and it's distinct, And that's insane. What is that? 41 to 2? That's an insane difference. And this is a clear sign that just engagement isn't there. It's not even just positive or negative. It's just nobody cares about this show. And it's already coming to criticism phase for the mainstream and access media. I have to keep saying that because if I wasn't saying it over and over again, I wouldn't believe it. It seems so strange. We'll bust through a lot of these last ones. We've got Forbes doing this regular thing. Eric Kane, he's been criticizing the show for a while, but he's saying Amazon's arrogant portrayal of the Lord of the Rings. That is a very great way of putting it, and I just want to do a couple things here. Far from sticking to the stories and themes in Middle-earth, the showrunners created their own story entirely, abandoning Tolkien's lore and making wild, reckless changes to the Legendarium in the process. Now, normally with adaptations, I will forgive some changes, and as long as it's gold for gold type situation. But Tolkien is a completely different animal. He created fantasy. This is the one that I think adaptation argument is the best more than anything else. Like for The Witcher, I love The Witcher. I think it should have been more accurate, but I could have forgiven lack of accuracy if it had been trading out gold for gold. But they changed out gold for garbage, and that's something that is unacceptable when you had gold right there the whole time. Perhaps worse, Amazon's adaptation is badly made TV with nonsensical story built on wild coincidence, so many wild coincidences, contrived plot lines, and a blatant disregard of the various building blocks that make any story complete. Logical character choices, a sense of time and space, and narrative tension, not to mention an overall large cast of mostly forgettable and uncharismatic characters. In many ways, The Rings of Power fails the writing and the acting of the presentation. That is a biting indictment of this horrific show. Eric Kane has been on top of this from the very beginning. I just wanted to shout out that, as always, from Forbes. So now that's The Guardian and Forbes, normally pro stuff like this. Now we have IndieWire. Is The Rings of Power a huge hit? A muted flop? It's complicated, so that's a little bit more towards the coping side, but it's at least admitting that there's a possibility, so that's enough to be warranted to be listed among all these other ones. And then we have this one from the Entertainment Weekly that is comparing House of the Dragon to Rings of Power, and it goes quite in a lot of detail, but at the end of the day, it gave the Rings of Power a D+ and House of the Dragon a B. And that's not far off from what I would do. I mean, like, Rings of Power, I would give a solid F, but a B, I think that's fair for House of the Dragon. So they're comparing these shows, and they can't even keep their stuff straight. So I really appreciated this article because, yeah, it's again, the coping is ending. The narrative, it feels like, is changing to a certain extent. And then we've got the Business Insider. It's struggling to connect with younger viewers. The target demographic that everyone talks about is very, very small for this show. So there's not going to be merchandising purchases. They're the main buying audience of America, and they're not watching the show. It's struggling to connect with younger viewers because it's garbage, and flashy lights aren't enough to keep them interested. So this is a very interesting article from the British Insider. There's this one from CNN that I've mentioned a few times. They won't be able to convince the world that it was a rousing success. This is coming from CNN. We've got Collider even needs to cool it with a fake out desk. There were so many of those. There were one, two, like right back to back that were ridiculous. And finally from CNET, why the Rings of Power season finale twist doesn't work. This is a lot, and there were a lot more that I decided not to include. The cope is ending, and that is such a strange thing to happen so quickly. I can't believe that it's happening this soon. The narrative is shifting. I thought it would be a month or so like the Kenobi deal was. The fans, they need to forget about it. The stands need to forget about it for a little while. The door mentality to kick in, get attached to the next product because it's always the next product for these stands. That hasn't happened yet. There's not something next for them to absorb their lives with, to make their whole identities out of. So their door mentality hasn't quite kicked in yet. And it's still changing the narrative, though. And that's something that's very impressive, that I'm very proud to see, and gives me a little bit of hope that it's changing this quickly. And perhaps there will be some people who will apologize for saying all these hateful names from before the show came out because they came to agree with us in the end. I doubt that'll be the case, but there definitely needs to be some apologies because now a lot of people are agreeing that the show is garbage, and these people will not take these labels of alt-right, misogynist, racist. They're just giving their opinions on a TV show, like so many of us did, and yet we were called these names. But this is something cool to see and very surprising to see nonetheless. But anyway, that's all I have for today. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Please like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next video. Anon. If you like what I do here and want to see good, compelling stories that Hollywood will no longer give you, check out my book series, Odyssey of a Phoenix, a mythological epic about philosophy, morality, and modern-day mental illness issues. Books 1, Down in Flames, and Book 2, Apocalypse Then, currently on sale. Book 3, Kill the Dark, coming soon.